Good morning and welcome again to Travels with Monkey Boy. We are on day 4 today of my trip to Ireland. So let me tell you the story first, then the map, then the pictures, just like always. So, Ireland day 4. Waking up in the castle, and after 3 days of grueling travel, I decided to let the Queen and the Princess sleep in until 7 a.m. I know, I'm getting soft in my old age. The castle had an amazing free breakfast, so while it was a bit of an expensive night, I think well worth it. Today we drove to the west. Connemara is the stark, beautiful, wild Atlantic coast of Ireland. The countryside features treeless, green, rocky mountains, much like the Scottish Highlands, with lakes and ocean and sheep everywhere, making it a magnificent 2-hour drive to Kylemore. Again, I don't care that much about religious sites, but Kylemore was worth the trip. Listing it as an abbey is a bit misleading. It is a castle turned into an abbey with a really nice romantic backstory. Seems there was an Englishman, Mitchell Henry, who was a surgeon and son of a wealthy cotton merchant. He met this beautiful Irish girl, Margaret Vaughan of County Down, and they were married in the mid 1840s and honeymooned at the Kylemore Hunting Lodge in Connemara. They both were enchanted by the beauty of the place, and when Mitchell's father died, leaving him a very wealthy man, he decided to build a palace for Margaret in this poor, stark part of Ireland. He bought the lodge and 1,000 acres of surrounding land. The hunting lodge was torn down, and the foundation stone was laid in 1867, and 5 years later, this astonishing castle was completed and the family moved in. Margaret and Mitchell had 9 children, and with all her local charity work, Margaret was apparently loved by the whole community. 2 years after the castle was completed, the family went to Egypt for a family adventure, and while there, Margaret got a fever and died. Mitchell had her embalmed in Egypt, brought her body back to Connemara, laid her in a glass coffin in the front hallway, and built a Gothic cathedral on the estate to honor Margaret. And then he built a mausoleum in the woods next to a giant oak tree where her body rests to this day. Mitchell joined her a few years later. So the tour of the Castle Abbey was like most things British, so well researched and laid out that it made a wonderful tour. One of my favorite parts was the fact that one of Margaret's boys, Alexander Henry, who was a modernist and had spent time in the London Fire Brigade, decided Kylemore needed a volunteer fire department. He built the firehouse and brought in state-of-the-art fire equipment. Soon after its completion, a fire developed in the engine room of the firehouse, and the only fire that they were ever involved in was watching helplessly as the firehouse burned down with all its equipment. It was never rebuilt. As for being an abbey, so crazy, like so much of the Irish stories. An order of Irish Benedictine nuns were facing religious persecution in the 1600s from the evil English overlords. 1600s, you know what that is, James I. Anyway, they moved their monastery to Ypres in Belgium. Any of you World War I nerds out there, like me, will immediately recognize the name. There were 5 battles in Ypres during the war. The first ended in a stalemate with both sides digging trenches, which was the beginning of trench warfare. The second was the first use of poison gas by the Germans, and the third one involved the British digging 19 miles of tunnels under the German trenches, packing them with 1 million pounds of high explosives, the most explosives at one time until Hiroshima, and then blowing them up. 10,000 German soldiers were killed instantly, and the Allies briefly won. Again, Hollywood, redoing the same Hollywood movies over and over again. Can't find an interesting story to tell? Anyway, there were over 1 million soldiers that died in the Battle of Ypres. The poor Irish nuns cloistered in their monastery were forced to leave as the shells destroyed their home. They moved back to Ireland and in 1920 were gifted the abbey. It remains an abbey to this day, and Lizzie was so taken with the place that she contemplated becoming religious just so she could live in this beautiful castle. At the time of our visit, they were building modern dorms to house they're going to have retreats in the place. As for the nuns, there are only 10 nuns living there now. The second part of our tour was the massive gardens built in the late 1800s. They had 21 heated greenhouses, including a 60-foot banana house, which is not as dirty as it sounds. The gardens have been restored without the greenhouses, but as the time of the year was not right for flowers, we decided to skip it and visit when Lizzie is none there. After our lunch, we began the drive to Cliffs of Moher. It didn't take long, and you can see the cliffs behind me. It didn't take us more than about 15 minutes to get distracted. There was a feed the sheep sign just outside the castle that forced us to visit this cute little farm. As the girls fed the sheep, I wandered towards the lake and found out that the whole site was built on a peat bog. Peat moss is a dense, spongy material formed from decaying organic material. For centuries, the Irish and the Scots used peat as their primary source for fuel, for cooking and heating. There have also been many bodies found in peat bogs, which do an excellent job of preserving them. You go to British Museum, you'll see Piltdown Man. I will write more about the bog bodies when I get to Dublin. To use the peat, they literally sawed chunks of turf to throw in the fires. And in this area, you could see where it was done. Weird history. After a several-hour drive, we arrived at the Cliffs parking lot around 5 p.m. Greeting us in the parking lot was an adorable red fox that just hung out there, I think to get social media posts. The cliffs, like Giant's Causeway versus the last time I was in Ireland, had transformed from a stunning natural wonder into an enormous tourist plaza featuring visitor center, gift shops, restaurants, and an optional visitors experience. Just like Giant's Causeway, come on, humans. The cliffs are shale and sandstone sea cliffs, 700 feet high, 70-story building, above the ocean. Carved by waves, wind, and salt air, the site is breathtaking. The amazing thing is that until the mid-1960s, this was just part of some dude's farm. At that time, German developers came poking around and asking if they could buy it. The Irish, spurred to an action that they hadn't bothered to get around to the previous 1,000 years, patriotically bought the land and have only slightly ruined it a little since. Next time I come, I'm sure there will be a wax museum, Ferris wheel, and fudge factories. We watched as the sun set and then raced to the car, Fox still hanging out there, and drove for an hour to Limerick, where our next Airbnb was. Okay, this place was a fail. It was a rundown apartment building on a darkened street in a sketchy-looking neighborhood. There was a parking garage we could use, except it was closed, so we street parked. Lizzie and I went up to the place to get the keys, while Danielle kept texting us to hurry so she wouldn't be killed. The inside was okay, and the hosts were kind, but yikes. Okay, and thus ends day 4. Let me share with you my screen, and I can show you on the map. Share. Okay. And here is our map. This is where we were day 3. Let me zoom out so you remember what Ireland looks like. Here's the UK, here's Ireland. Up here is Iceland, up here is Greenland, over here is America. But we were in Ireland. Okay, we started, if you remember, at the Clare Galway Castle. He drove out to the Kylemore Abbey and Victorian walled gardens. And as you can see, Abbey is built on this beautiful lake, 1,000 acres of land. It's just a stunning place. And then as we zoom out, that was a couple-hour drive, so you get an idea of the distance, Clare Galway to Kylemore. And then from Kylemore, we drove to the Cliffs of Moher. Let's zoom in just so you get an idea of what the cliffs look like. Just amazing. And here's the guy's farm. And this was just his backyard. He could wake up every morning until the 1960s and just go out and look at the cliffs. You can take a walk along here. Here's O'Brien's Tower, which is just kind of a little nothing thing. Cliffs of Moher experience, all the nonsense American stuff, and here's the parking lot where the Fox was. Okay, and after that, we'd come this way, so we drove down to the south on our way to Limerick, and it was about an hour's drive to Limerick. And this is where it is, and that's where we'll leave off and come back tomorrow. And let's take a look at just a few pictures. I'll stop with the sharing. Okay. There's Lizzie and Miss Danielle in front of Kylemore Castle. I don't want to call it an abbey because come on. There's the sweet girls. There's Lizzie overlooking the castle. Here's the other direction. So these are the like the Highlands, the from Scotland, very much like them. Here's the background. Ireland, you're always about 15 minutes away from beautiful dark rain clouds appearing above. There's another view of the castle. Here are the ramparts. They didn't need ramparts. These are where the archers used to stand to shoot at people, but in the 1860s, they didn't need it. And there's the Benedictine cross. Here's me doing look at that artistic photograph on. There's a little pond with the reflecting sun. Such an amazing photographer. Zoomed ahead by accident. Okay, there was the feed the sheep. And out here as I walked out to this area with the sheep out there. And if you can see these, like right in here is a good indication of the peat where they would cut it out here as well. Where they would cut it out and just throw it in their furnace and cook it. Oh, there's a better view of it right behind the sheep's butt. There's a sheep walking along with the moors in the background. And that's it. So that's all I got for you today. Hopefully I'll get day 5 up in the next day or so. Thanks for coming. Bye.